Hello and welcome to part 2 of Mr. Logistics Supply Chain Management. I guess I went over the basics last time, just really basic, and I wanted to keep this slide also very basic as well. Basically, I'm just doing chunk size bits of information for you so you don't have to sit through a 33-minute video. I mean, logistics is fun and all, but we all know that we're sort of time poor in this day and age, so I try to keep these presentations as short as possible. So in the last video I went over the buyer and seller relationship, basic buyer and seller relationship, and the logistics side of things and how it would operate in a perfect world when all the stock is available. So in the next slide, as you can see in this slide, I've presented the buyer and the seller and the purchase order receive and the cycle in which it goes to the warehouse team, and the warehouse team picks the goods, and then transport is arranged, and then the customer is invoiced after all of that. So that's the very basics of the first presentation that I had, really summing it down because I want to sort of move on to the next topic. And the next topic I've got here on the next slide is sort of looking at the relationship between internal staff, the sales rep, freight forwarders, and the roles that they all play when it comes to a supply chain management type scenario. So personally, from my own experience, and this is just my experiences, these are what I'm going to be sharing with you. So if you're familiar with supply chain, then you're going to understand a bit of what I'm saying here. So the sales rep has got the sale, quoted the customer basically, and given lead times to say that we're going to be able to deliver on time in 3 months' time. Then he'll pass on that information to the supply chain staff or administration staff or whatever title you'd like to call them, and he'll say, okay, I've got this order here, can you go now go to the freight forwarder or go and book freight or find a way of getting it to me. Basically. And of course all companies have their own internal processes about how they do this, and of course, as anybody that's been in supply chain knows, supply chain and sales reps don't communicate very well with one another. Sales reps have got their own sort of fantasy when it comes to ETAs and then supply chain has got the reality of when they can actually deliver, and that's when the pressure starts to happen, when late deliveries start to happen. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So as we can see, I've got we can see the supply chain rep in his little suit on the left hand side, and he now has all the orders been entered, and now it's up to the supply chain expediter to now arrange freight, arrange goods to be delivered, and all that sort of thing. This role can vary depending on the kind of responsibilities within the company, but we're going to go with the fact that now they're going to arrange the goods, buy the goods. So what will happen is a purchase order will be raised, generally within a company, to a vendor that they know of, which will be road freight, air freight, or sea freight. Well, air freight and sea freight are obviously overseas. So let's say we go with the overseas option in this example. If once the supply chain guy has written down everything or cubed out a container for the sake of sea freight, cubed it all out, puts out a purchase order, gives it to the freight forwarder. Freight forwarder can then put it onto the vendor. The vendor will then accept it and will send back a pro forma, suggest maybe you need to add a bit more items into a container and such. The pro forma is then checked by the supply chain expediter to make sure that everything is okay on the paperwork, because mistakes can happen and you don't want to be ordering stuff that you don't need. So yeah, very important, always double check the pro forma before saying A-OK, it's all good. Now the vendor will accept the order. Freight will be, mode of transport will be decided depending on the ETAs that can be met. Sometimes you might book sea freight depending on the company you work for, but you know, you could book for sea freight and then all of a sudden the vendor the vendor will sometimes can be late depending on manufacturing times and stuff like that, or so you might have to go the air freight option. Always make it known to the freight forwarder your ETAs and how important those ETAs are, and that's when your real job starts to kick in as an expediter, is managing ETAs from the vendor and making sure that on-time delivery can be met so that you can then service the customer, because at the end of the day your job is to service the customer. Also, great communication between you and the sales rep and the freight forwarder, your job will be a lot easier at the end of the day. So that is a very, very basic overview of how things work. I didn't get into XWorks or CIF or Incoterms as they call it. I never got into any of that in this video. I thought I'd keep it quite brief and to the point so that somebody looking at this from the outside that doesn't understand what's going on hopefully gets a good understanding through this very basic presentation. Hope this has been helpful. Leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe button, and that is it for Mr. Logistics. Thank you and have a great day.